Cool. Yes, so as I say, I'm going to be doing a talk today on building a module in Raku. For those of you who aren't aware, Perl6 is officially being renamed Raku. Larry there was a whole big discussion going about it, and Larry wandered in at the end of it and went, I approve of this, and then gave a biblical quote and wandered off again. So it is being renamed Raku. Right now, the runtime is still called Perl6. You still download it from Perl6, but also if you go to raku.org, that now actually has a thing there. There was placeholders in place for it and stuff. So the talk is I'm using Raku because I'm trying to get my head around calling it Raku. So what is app MI6? It's as it's described from the GitHub repo, it is a minimal authoring tool for Raku Perl6. Written by Shoichi Kaji. I pronounced that totally wrong, I'm sure. His GitHub's there. I'll be putting this on the site, so if anybody wants to, they can go and have a look. He's written both Perl5 and Raku modules, and it handles everything you need to be able to create a module, test it, build it, including building. If you've got sort of C code for it, there's stuff in there to be able to run a builder that will compile your C code, and then releasing it to CPAN. Which is really good. You can also build a distribution tarball, which you can then release in the second way, which involves GitHub. And that gives you the potential of, there's a way that, I still need to do a talk about this, but I kind of need to test it, where you can basically configure Zeph to use internal Git libraries. So if you want to have a dark pan for Raku, you can, or you can just release it to CPAN. And you install it using, as Mohammed said in his talk, Zeph install MI6. Zeph is the CPAN M for Raku. It is great. It will download your modules from various different locations. So your first command is very simple. New command. You give it a name. It will. So this was the idea I was going to have. I was going to write, because I noticed there isn't actually a function, or if there is, it's hidden really well to convert radians to degrees and back again. And there was a Perl6 weekly challenge a couple of weeks ago that involved angles and stuff. And I'm like, why isn't there a function to do that? So I was going to write a really simple little library that just converted between the two, but I didn't get around to it. But what I will do is I can show you, here's one I created earlier. So here's the folder it does. And I never used tree, but let's see if it works. No, it doesn't. Okay. Like I say, never use it. But so when you do new and the file name, one of the things it does is it converts the colons into dashes. So you see the this folder here was created using MI6 new math convert angles. It's given me a bin folder which I think is empty. Yep. It's given me a changes file. Which currently has nothing much in it, just saying initial version. We've got this.ini, I'll cover that in a little bit. Note that it's got a git folder and a git ignore. It's got a library folder, a lib folder, which if we look inside has math, convert, and then angles. So it's basically created the basic file, and if we have a quick look at that, we can see there's actually more of it than I thought, because it's already got pod filing, so I'll just do a quick lesson on it. So it's pretty much just using v6.c, which is an interesting choice because we're on to D now and almost on to E, but there we go. And it's defining it as a unit. So it's saying, so the default thing it will give you is a class where the entire file defines that class. That's what the unit keyword does, if people don't know that. And then it gives you some basic pod, which also converts over to the meta6. I'll show you the meta6 file. So this is the default meta6 file, which is used basically to tell CPAN and Zeph how to do stuff. And this was, like I say, all automatically created. I'll go back to the slides. Yeah, so as I say, base module, test file. We've got a README file. The README file is markdown because that's what most people use nowadays. It's automatically generated. Meta 6, it's got a Git repo, it's got an initial commit for your Git repo, and it's got a Travis file so that basically you can take this, make a GitHub GitHub repo, set it up as the origin, push it up there, and it will just work. And I love that because I'm lazy. So if things just work, I'm happy. So that's cool. So that's the new command. Great. You're not going to use it that often though. What you're going to use a lot, no, let's go the right way, Simon. This is the one you're going to use a lot. MI6 test. Which I just realised I normally had was, oh well, doesn't matter. By default, this will basically run all your things in your test folder. You can give it verbose option, and you can give it jobs option. It runs the test by calling prove, and then setting the library. I don't think it's using prove6, which is the specific Perl6 version, but I'll have to check that. You can also specify specific tests. So again, quick demonstration. This is another library that I made earlier. This is called trait env. What this lets you do is define a variable. I'll give you a quick demonstration of what it does. So P6 is just my alias for Perl6 -e because I don't like having to type too much. So we'll use trait env. My $home is env. Say $home. So I wrote this because I do a lot of Docker stuff. And what this allows you to do is say, and you can use it on a method or on a variable, and it allows you to basically just say, this variable comes from the environment by using isEnv, and then it will translate the name, look up the environment variable. It's got a lot of stuff for doing things with arrays and hashes, so you can basically really easily define variables. So there we go, showing off about that. But also, if I do an MI6 test in here, we can see, he says, that it runs my tests. So I've got a whole big pile of tests for that, because there was all kinds of crazy stuff to get it all working. But we can also do MI6 test. I'll pick one. Let's do t/09 basic variable, and I'll do a -v on it. Hey. So that's run the whole test, but verbose mode, so you can see all the tests that it's run. And we can also do, let's try minus jobs equals 4. And that will run it in parallel. Which I always think this is quite good to run your tests in parallel in case you have tests that rely on other tests, which is bad. Don't do that, folks. So that's cool. So yes, MI6 test, you should be running this a lot. Lots and lots and lots. Always run MI6 test. It's awesome. Make sure all your tests are running. Everybody loves tests, right? Cool. Next command is MI6 build. You don't actually need this too much. What MI6 build does though is it regenerates the Meta6 JSON file based on whatever modules you've created. It regenerates the README text. So if you've updated your pod, you can do a build and make sure the README file is what you're expecting. It will also, if you have a build.pm, it will fire that up, create the build object, and run the build command on it. I've never used that, so I'm not sure exactly use case for that. Like I say, I think the main case for that is if you're wanting to build like a C library or something and include it with your thing, then your build file can do that. So it gives you that ability to do the additional stuff. But yeah, I don't use build that often. The next one though, this is the secret sauce. This is the bit I love. MI6 release. So when you do an MI6 release, it goes through a 12-stage checklist, so you don't have to. So the first thing it does is it looks at your changes file. And if you don't have anything in your changes file, remember when I showed the changes file, it had next, and then it said initial version. If you don't have anything under the next, it will throw an error and say, put something in your changes file. So it forces you to update your changes file. This is good. It checks that you have set up an upstream Git repository. If you have not set up an upstream Git repository, it will go, you haven't got an origin. I don't know what to do. So it's basically, the idea is that you should always be pushing it up to somewhere else. GitHub, GitLab, whatever, or your own Git server, but not just keeping it locally. So that's cool. It checks to make sure that everything that you've changed has been committed. So if you have files that have not been committed, it will throw an error and say, why haven't you committed these files? Why aren't they in git ignore if you don't want them to be added to the repo? So that's also, again, a useful thing. Checklists are your friend. Bumps the package version, asks you what version you would like to bump it to. It will give you the default, which is just to update the minor revision number, but you can use it to update to a full revision and all this kind of stuff. Regenerates the meta file and the README with the new version number. Runs your test suite, so you can't do a release without your test passing. That's good. We like that. Makes up a distribution tarball. Updates a changes file after that because that way the distribution tarball doesn't have the next bit in it and stuff. Uploads the tarball to Cpan. There is a step in there where it says, are you sure you want to do this? Then commits the changes to Git. So that includes the changes to README and MI6 JSON. Makes a Git tag and pushes them all up to the thing, and then finally cleans up after itself. Hello, yes? That is the order it does them in. Yeah, pretty much. Well, I think it rolls it back if the tests don't pass. So it looks something like this. And then why is it? Oh, yeah, because it didn't change the test. So there we go. I was going to run it, and the first thing, I haven't changed the release documentation because I haven't actually changed anything. Should I do that? Yeah, why not? Minus NW. LPW test. I'm not actually going to release this because I don't know if anybody's using it, but I quite like this one. So cool. So now it's saying next release version. Yeah, we'll say it's 1.02. I can always tidy it up later. It regenerates the files, does the distribution test. Upload to Cpan. Am I sure I want to? Actually, no, thanks. At which point he goes, abort. Let's see what it has done. So if I look at meta.json, it has actually bumped the version to 1.02. Yeah. So yeah, it is a minimal thing. So I'll tidy it up in a sec. Actually, what I'll do is I'll just check it out, pull it back to the previous version. But yes. It is very useful. No, that wasn't what I meant to do. Bad, Simon. Alt tab, that's what I meant to do. But it's a very useful checklist to go through. It really does cover all of the things that it should do. I didn't mention earlier, also there's a license file as well. You can change the license if you want to. No, that's not what I wanted to do. This is what I wanted to do. Yeah, so there's a few things you'll need to do if you want to really make use of the app. You need to set up a pause account, and you'll need a .pause file in your home folder. A .pause file is actually described in the MI6 GitHub page, but it's basically just a file with username, password, and then a space, and then the username and the password after each one. I'm not going to show you mine because it's got my password in it, and I forgot to make a test one to show you. Sorry about that. There is also a file called dis.ini, which allows you to modify how the file does things. Main things it lets you do is change where the README file gets its pod from and whether or not the README file should be generated from pod. If you want to just control it by yourself, you can. Or if you want to have like a separate pod file for your documentation so it's not in the core file, you can do that. You can control what it does to tidy stuff up. I don't use that much. The final one is you can flag files to not be included in the include section. I asked for that. That was kind of cool. Because if you've got a file that's got multiple sub-modules that you don't really ever want people to be using by themselves, they only should ever really be used by the main module or something. You don't really want people to be able to search for them with Zeph and stuff. They're not really standalone things. So being able to put in the dist.ini to say, don't include this, is quite useful. So in this case, we've got libtrait env shared is not included in the, actually I commented out because now it is. but for a little while it wasn't. There's one of my things is using it, but I haven't fully released that one yet. So, but that, yeah, like I say, that can be quite useful. Yeah. So, how am I doing for time? I'll probably zip through that one a bit quickly. I've got a bit of time. So yeah, I've started putting my About Me slides on the end for reasons. I'm Scimon. I do a lot of Raku development, but mostly for fun because I'm still trying to convince people that we should be able to get paid to do it. So this is why I mostly do these talks. I'm working at Zoopla backend with some DevOps stuff. We are hiring. Go and have a look at the site. I have a question slide, but really I should do this slide last. So if anybody has any questions, I'd like to thank the sponsors. But yeah, we've got a bit of time because that was a bit quicker than I thought it would be, mainly because Mohammed had already covered some of the stuff. So anybody got any questions about Raku or MI6? Hello.
Is there a config file for MI6 itself to control what things get put into the new contribution?
The question was, is there a config file for MI6 itself? I don't believe there is, but the module is under heavy development. I mean, there was a change made to it yesterday, I noticed, and you can recommend things. So if you want to recommend changes, it's quite modular in its build process. The thing I found quite interesting was the actual. I don't have it open. The release process is each step is a separate class that just does that step, and they're all. Some of them are like only 2 or 3 lines long, but it does mean that it'd be very easy to add more release steps or skip release steps and such like. So the ability to configure that is something that I think could be added easily enough, but it's not there at the moment. Hello. Yes, dependencies will go in the meta.json file. That's not what I wanted to do. So we have here, there's a depends array, and that handles, there is also test depends and build depends, and MI6 in the documentation, it says if you want to modify those, you need to manage that yourself. It won't do it for you. But if you use an external library, I tend not to, especially with this one because it's supposed to be quite low level. But if you use an external library, then it will pick up on it and it will put it in the depends for you automatically. Yeah. Any other? Yes?
This is not necessarily an MI6 related question, but I often see in Perl6 or Raku modules, they have an authority.
An author.
Not an author, but like
Nope.
We have seen the same thing in Perl5, Scimon authority.
Yeah, or something. I'm not entirely sure. But actually, when you show the file that was generated by...
Yep. Give me a sec. Yep. Try env. Yeah. Yeah. So there's various options you can put in there. So now there's 2 schools of thought about how this should work. One school of thought is that the attributes on this module should build the values in Meta6 JSON, and the other school of thought is it's the other way around. It doesn't really matter, quite frankly, as long as they're both in sync. But one of the things that Perl6 allows you to do is you can tag the traits, the attributes directly onto the module, and you can access them. So you can look at a running classes version and see what it is, or you can look it up through the Meta6 JSON. Different options. And the auth thing is it's the owner, the authoritative thing for this version. So one of the interesting things is there are a few modules that have changed author over time because somebody else has picked him up, and you can see the different version for the different versions, the different authors and stuff. If you look it up in Zeph. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I've not used that one, so, but yeah. And just to see who owns it.
The actual names can be the same. So you could, somebody create and releases a module name, something sharing, maybe they release a module name after something, you have one, internally.
Yeah. When you do a Zeph install, you can specify the version and you can specify the authority, and it will try its best to install the one you asked for. So, yeah. Cool. We've got a bit more time. Yeah, more questions? Anybody? No?
Will that actually create a new repo?
It won't create the external repo because you don't have to use GitHub. You may want to use GitLab. You may want to have another one, but it will assume that you want to be pushing to a central origin. So you do need to set up the origin server. Generally not that hard. Go onto GitHub. It gives you the commands to do it, and it just works. So.
It does seem like a potential
Yeah. Yeah. But I think that would maybe be a module you want to put in. Like I say, it is it's a minimalist. So the idea is it doesn't do everything. There is another module tool called DDT, which I've looked at but not used because I just started using MI6 and it does everything I want nice and quickly. But if you're interested, you might want to also look at DDT because it might provide you with more. I know it does a little bit more functionality. It'll do things like it's got commands for actually creating skeleton classes and modules and stuff. So, yeah, your mileage may vary. Any other questions? One more questions? Another, and then I'll do you. Yeah. I guess it's like module initializer 6 because for Perl6, I guess, but I like to think of it as a very secret service because it's fun like that. Yeah, it's like Bond, James Bond. Sorry, yes. Oh, sorry. Oh yeah, minimalist 6 probably. Yeah.
Yeah, standard is generated the test file. Doesn't have the ability to regenerate the test file based on the methods that are created.
No, that would be a cool thing to do. I think that possibly that's a neat thing I might look at to do as a separate module. But no, yeah, that would be quite cool. I generally take the test file it gives you, which literally just says change me, and my initial test file is pretty much always the same. Which is just use OK for each of my modules. So that way, if any of my modules is just broken, this test will fail. And when I'm not running them in parallel, this test always runs first. So it's immediately like, oh, crap. It's all gone wrong. Yeah. Any more questions? Hello. Well, yes. So the extensions are all going to be changing. One of the things I was going to talk to Shohei, names terrible, the author of MI6, was I was going to talk to him about whether he had any plans for automatically adding a thing to change all the extensions, or I might just put one in so you can basically just say update extensions. Yeah, there is a plan to do it. The way I believe that it's going to be working is there's going to be a release of Raku probably early next year, maybe the end of this year, which will change or make Raku into a working executable name. But Perl6 will still be a working executable name. Will allow all of the new file extensions to work, but also accept all the old file extensions. And then there will be a period of time where both of them will work simultaneously. Then they're going to deprecate the old extensions. So if you're still using them, it will start throwing warnings to say you are using deprecated extensions, please fix it. And then eventually, and we're probably talking a couple of years, they will finally get rid of all of the old extensions. So there is a plan for how they're looking at rolling out these changes. You can find it online. I can share a link with it for anybody who's interested. But yeah, it's not going to be a short thing, the renaming. There's a lot of work that's going to be going into it. I might get involved a bit. Hello? Sorry. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I think, yeah, the official file extension is going to be .raku. Yeah. It is. But the problem is .rk is already being used. So, rocket something or other. But yeah, there is an already existing thing using that. So, sorry, you had another question?
Yeah, I was just in passing, you mentioned the build.pm.
Yeah.
And I was a bit surprised by that it's not either PM6 or cat.pl. It would be...
It is probably actually PM6. I probably wrote that slide wrong. Yeah. I will double check, but I think it may be PM6. In which case, I'll update the slide before I upload it to the thing. I don't see any reason why the name has to be changed. They are recommending people take Perl6 out of the, so most of my repositories, you see here that this has got p6 trait env, and that's what the repository is called on GitHub. I will probably be renaming that. It's a recommendation they're saying to people to try and move away from the Perl6 name, but I don't see any reason why the MI6 name needs to be changed, but it might be. We'll see. Yeah. 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 I think Meta 6 they're keeping the name of because it's going to be a pain in the butt to change. Because it's kind of hidden, you know. Yeah, V6, use V6 will still work in Raku. But there is then a look at them changing the versioning from that. So with Raku you've got V6 and then you've got .c, .d, and the next one's going to be .e. So the versioning's like letter based, but there is talk of now we're not tied to 6, changing the versioning going forth, and as well as there's talk of Perl changing its versioning, and that's a whole other story, and I do not want to get into that, and I think it's now time for me to stop. Thank you very much.